The Islamic State is very much still an active organization, even if it's not a top news story anymore. Issues like Ukraine, far-right extremism, as well as China are in the front pages now, but the Islamic State continues to operate as an insurgency in its core territories in Iraq and Syria, but has also expanded activities in more peripheral areas. They've been able to create new bases where they can build themselves up and expand their territory, as well as potentially do attacks again in Western countries. I'm Aaron Zellin, the Richard Borrow Fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, and I focus on the jihadi movement in the Arab world, in particular groups like the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, and Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. We decided to create a map about a year and a half ago, and it's called the Islamic State Select Worldwide Activity Interactive Map, and it's trying to show a number of different types of activities related to the Islamic State as well as actions against the Islamic State. We wanted to make it easier to digest certain information related to the Islamic State since it's more visual, and it includes statements, videos, as well as magazines from the group. There's a bunch of legal documents in it as well. So you have both sides of the coin, from one side of the government, the other side from the group as well, and it combines the primary sources from both ends. This map is for many individuals. Of course, it's useful for people within academia since it's a great resource for research. This goes all the way back to when the organization first started in 1999-2000 when Abu Musab al-Zarqawi founded the organization. It's very useful for people in government if they're investigating certain aspects of the organization. It's also useful for people working in NGOs and humanitarian organizations if they're working on the ground in these countries to sort of see what the risk might be. And it's also useful for people that are working in areas like international law, especially if they're trying to prosecute somebody that was involved in some type of human rights abuse or trying to take somebody to the International Criminal Court. There are three main categories that we're using in this map. One is propaganda, another one is designations, and the third one is legal cases. With the propaganda one, this is from the Islamic State. We wanted to break it down in many layers just because they have a very complex media system. There's statements and videos, there's magazines, there's the claims of responsibility that they do, and then finally there are pictures. Within the pictures there are, their daily activities as well as when they pledge allegiance to a new leader, and then everything in between with all of the other type of activities. In terms of the claims of responsibility, it's a tricky territory because while it does provide information about something they actually did, or at least claim to have done, there's also some areas of it where there might not be 100% truth, especially in the case of, say, how many people were killed or how many people were injured, where they might exaggerate that for their own purposes. But I think because we're listing it under propaganda, I think people will have a better idea that they shouldn't necessarily take everything at face value, and that they should then maybe cross-check it with something in the news as well. In terms of the designations, it's broken down into individuals that were specifically designated versus companies and entities that might be involved in helping facilitate these activities of the individuals. The designations is based off of the US government designations from the State Department and Treasury Department, in part because most other countries follow what the US does, whether it's other countries or even the United Nations in many respects. And then finally, there are the legal cases, which is broken out mainly between the United States, just because there's a lot more documentation in the United States, as well as the fact that the US publicly releases these documents, versus non-US cases. However, we try and supplement any cases outside of the US if there isn't an official press release or a court case document with a news report from the local media outlet in that country. There's this guy named Imran Ali. He was charged when he was caught in Baghouz, which was the area that was the last territorial control of the Islamic State in March 2019. You could see that he was then brought back to the United States and indicted in Miami, Florida. That provides the legal documents related to this from the courts, the criminal complaint, as well as others, a summary of the legal case, links back to the Justice Department's website related to this, as well as related entries. And what's interesting is that this guy was actually previously designated by the United States as a foreign terrorist. So then you can click on that particular entry and see that that's from the Treasury Department and that the guy is actually originally from Trinidad and Tobago. So you could see all these different international connections as well between different people. I think for the map, in many ways, it helps better visualize the scope of what the Islamic State does. It's one thing to maybe passingly hear about it, but then when you see it on a map and then all the other types of activities related to the group, whether from themselves or actions against them by the US government or other governments, then you could really see how transnational in many ways this really is. For example, this is the most recent pledge of allegiance from Wilayat Wasadi Firkir, the Central African province, to the new leader of the Islamic State. This will then link to the photo essay of them pledging allegiance as well, which you can find that they put out a few weeks or so before the video. And then that will also provide a related entry to the original audio message that was put out when the leader of the Islamic State was killed. And that one in particular, you can scroll down for a while because it has related entries to all the different pictures and video releases related to the subsequent pledges of allegiance that happened after that. One of the unique features of this map is that it also provides details on ISIS's operational areas where it's involved in more insurgent activities, and we put on the map in specific colors, whether it's in territorial control, which is more purple, a large presence is red, a medium presence is orange, and a small presence is yellow. And this is done at more of the provincial instead of the country level, since a lot of maps out there, when you see them in the news, they'll just have a big black blob, essentially, of individuals trying to show where it's located, but it's not as precise. And therefore, we wanted to sort of, you could zoom in and see more specifically how they're operating in a particular area, and in many ways it tracks with the entries on the map. And one of the cool things about this feature is that we can toggle it in the different provinces at various points, so you'll be able to see how it changes over time, since obviously the ebb and flow of the organization has changed. So for example, back in 2015 or 16, you'd see in Libya that there'd be a huge area where it's purple in the middle of the country, insert, but nowadays, they don't control any territory, and they really only have a small area of control in a lower central portion near Sebha in the desert region. So this is the landing page for the map here. At the top, you'll be able to see how many entries there are, and then next to that, it'll tell you when it's been updated most recently. And what's useful is that right under there, there's a tab where you can then see the most recent entries that have been added to the map, and then you can go through them. So going forward with this map, we'll continue to update this as quickly as possible in all these different categories, as well as to continue to backdate content historically so that it could be the most comprehensive archive and mapping project related to the Islamic State out there.